I am here with Justin Teddy Cliffe. It's great to connect with you. Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes. So I'm going to just jump right into, what we've talked about doing an interview with you to talk about you and your work and your background.
Okay, it's
So you
go
ready?
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be as eloquent as possible.
So, brief introduction. Justin Teddy Cliffe is a self-professed South Wales-based performer, theatre maker, come nonsensical ideas man. Let's get some context for that, the basics about you and your background. And this will be for people who don't know you, or for people who know you but may want to know a little bit more, or may just want to hear it again.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in the geographics. You emphasize that you're South Wales based. Is your
Mhm.
location very important to you?
Um, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I grew up on the border of England and North Wales. So South Wales is a distinction in terms of, I guess it's something that there's something that's very personal to me, which is that I've moved from where I grew up. So it kind of feeds into the weird relationship I have with Newport, which is that I feel I'm a part of it, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm of it or from it. So it's kind of a strange place to exist in. It's somewhere I feel really connected to, but at the same time, I feel like a foreigner in it because I'm a borderland sort of person. So I'm not Welsh, but I'm Welsh. I'm not English, but identified as English within the sort of Welsh art scene. I did a lot of my training in West Midlands in England, and I did obviously a lot of my schooling in North Wales. So I guess it was just kind of a distinction that I wanted to make to kind of locate myself somewhere that felt more like a place that I was going to stay in and investigate in a bit more detail. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying you kind of landed in Newport, or you specifically chose it as a place to investigate?
No, I studied here, so I came to university here, and I did a just the weirdest performing arts degree at the University of Newport, South Wales, as it was then known. It's now the University of South Wales, and the course I did no longer exists. But it was performing arts, and it contained all kinds of stuff like devising theatre and Mayor Hold, and we did kind of filmmaking, and we did radio production, and we did all these. We just did a whole plethora of stuff, and I guess that's what brought me here was the interest in the course. And me and my friend we went to college together, and we came to university together. So I actually didn't make any choice really. I think I just followed her because it was someone that I knew, and she seemed like she had a good idea. So we came and did this course together, and I stuck around and I stayed, and I'm here like I don't know, like 12 years later, still living in the city that I feel like I became an adult in.
Have you lived elsewhere and have you worked elsewhere?
So I a lot of my early work was in Birmingham. So I was working a lot. I did a residency at the Birmingham Rep. I did a artist development with China Plate, who are kind of a prominent West Midlands based company, and have left Newport to do stuff. And I think like as we start talking about work, we'll find out what work is important to be located here and what work can go to other places, because I think I have an ambition to do both of those things.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think it's very interesting that we started with the location and the geographics because it sounds as though there is an important link to your work, and I'm pleased about that. So cool. Let's talk about your work. Um, and let's catch up because we've been intending to do this interview for a while now since Welcome Back, which was at the end of May, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's start with Welcome Back then. It's the one I'm very familiar with because it was the last piece I saw you in. You performed live. to cutouts, to cardboard cutouts in Le Pub in
Yeah.
Newport,
Yeah.
and to a human audience in cyberspace. So how was that?
Um, it was better and more than I thought it was going to be. I think I did it as one of those things you do to make sure that you are testing yourself and pushing yourself, and that you are staying on the edge of comfort, so that you can keep sort of growing and finding out what you want to do next and exploring what you might be capable of. So it was definitely that kind of job where I'd kind of had this money to secure myself from Welsh government, and I decided to use it to kind of allow myself to reactivate some of the itches that I had, some of the wants I had to just get up and perform and do stuff. And I had a huge conversation with myself about what the work should be and what it could be. And all I knew was that I wanted to make something new. And so I knew that it had to be that I was making it in real time. So I was making it about what I was experiencing in the world now. And I knew that, all of these things were suggested because of isolation, really, because there was so much time to kind of uh, um, you know, avert our attention inwardly and kind of pick ourselves apart and really get to the nuts and bolts of who we are and what we want and what that means and what have we been doing up until this point and where should we go now, and fear and anxiety and all of these different things were really tangible and coursing through our bodies and through our minds. And I felt that was a collective feeling. I felt like we were all feeling versions of that. And so for me, Welcome Back was just about articulating my version of that experience in the hope that it would resonate with other people. And then we would kind of close the circle on needing one another and needing connection, because I think all of those feelings, essentially, they came from isolation and loneliness. And so I felt like if I just shared my isolation and my loneliness with people, then I would connect with them and then cease to be isolated and lonely. So it was kind of just a very raw, instinctive act that was kind of turned into a ritual in lots of ways, with the making of those cardboard people. Every time someone booked a ticket online, it was kind of like it was someone saying, oh yeah, I want to be there. And then I was honoring that in my own space, in my own world, in my flat, by making them out of cardboard. So that it was because the reason I did that is because I had this real problem with physicals, not knowing that they wouldn't be joining me in the physical space, and how kind of I didn't feel like anything was real unless it was going to join me in the physical space. So yeah, it became a ritual, and actually, I think it's, for me, personally, for me, it's the best thing I've made, because it was just kind of it was just authentic, and I felt like I did. When they, like, you can never achieve 100% of what you think you're going to do, right? When you're making something, I mean, we all feel this, I think. And I think, like, if I was to say that I got as close as possible with Welcome Back, then I would kind of agree with myself and say, yes, I got as close as possible to the thing I'd imagined in my head beforehand. So yeah, I was. Yeah,
Well,
I was.
bravo, because I saw it and I really, really loved it. So if I'm thrilled to hear that you feel so satisfied with the work that you did, because that's actually probably the hardest thing to achieve, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well though, when we're trying to achieve that, we're trying to we're trying to get our audience to agree with us. So we're kind of going out there and we're kind of hoping that our audience will agree that what we're doing is valuable or important in some way.
Right.
But actually in this instance, I really just felt like if I felt that, because I was kind of on my own. It was me and two other people in the room. So I felt like if I felt that, then it worked. And it seemed to resonate with other people. But
Well,
yeah,
that's
I'm glad about that.
fascinating. Yeah, sure. And that's actually fascinating. And perhaps there are lessons for a performer to take away from that. I don't know if you've been able to articulate that, but you have to some degree just now. That
Yeah, right.
that's absolutely fascinating. And yeah, so, if I could just ask which of your audiences was more receptive?
The cardboard audience or the online audience?
Yes.
Oh wow, what an amazing question. Do you know what? The cardboard audience was real for me, and they definitely I interpreted them differently each time I looked at them, and each night I did it, they responded differently. So they were definitely active audience members, and I really did feel in the moments when I was being kind of passive aggressive or kind of a bit obtuse and stuff, that they were kind of repelling. And in the moments when I needed comfort and um, care, that they were offering me that as well.
That's
So
amazing.
definitely the cardboard audience.
I
Yeah.
could see the rapport. I could almost feel it. I was in the cyber audience watching, and we would, as a very giving audience member, I was trying to reach out to you. Believe me.
Yeah.
But I saw that they were giving you something. I saw that.
They were, but then I wondered what I wondered about that afterwards was, what did you recognize yourself in that room because of that process of knowing that I'd made one of those that would represent you because you bought a ticket?
I gotta be honest, I did not know that nuance.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that I was being represented. So I couldn't feel that, but I just sensed in the generic sense that, as a regular theater goer, I felt part of that space.
Yeah.
But it's also been a
Okay, good.
fascinating experience watching theater online and
Mhm.
trying to give the performer something, really
Yeah.
trying to be present and give something that the performer would feel, because it really is a give and take, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I did a show with National Theatre Wales in the first lockdown, and weirdly that was also in May. So it kind of like was almost like every lockdown year I would have to. Now is the rule. If we have another one, I'm gonna have to do something. But that one was over Zoom, so I had a direct relationship with the audience. I could see them, I could hear them, I could interact with them, and that was a part of the decision making process in Welcome Back as well, when I was collaborating with Jorge, who was the sort of tech creative behind the work. And we kind of had that conversation, and all roads kind of led back to isolation and loneliness. So it felt like not integrating anything where I could see the people watching, but just knowing that that there were people watching was enough. But I was worried about that. I was worried about the exchange of you knowing that I know you're there and that we can have that. And that's why me and Jorge worked for it to be live, so we knew that it wasn't pre-recorded. And that's really where that came from, and that was quite a big push from us, because it meant that we had to like kind of upgrade the internet, and we had to double check all of these different systems and kind of run the show in such a way, so as we didn't like lag or fall back in the streaming, but also in a way that was satisfying because you knew something could go wrong. You knew it was live. You knew there was this essence of, that essence of danger or something, something happening that the unplanned is kind of what keeps theatre alive, isn't it? Otherwise, I just think we're watching a film.
Yes, yes, that was really beautifully described, and you really have in your answers so far about Welcome Back. You've answered a lot of my questions.
Oh, okay,
So
sorry.
you really have absolutely perfectly, because we're recording on Zoom, and I'm going to try and keep it moving as well. So thank you, really beautifully expressed. And I'd like to know, are you still performing online?
Um, I haven't done a performance online since Welcome Back. I
Okay.
haven't done any kind of performance since then, actually. Um, but the next thing I'm working on, which is in co-production with the Riverfront in Newport, which is the TigerFace Show. That's going to be on in October, and that is going to have a live audience, and it's also going to go online.
Okay.
Um, and so there'll be a kind of integrated online access portal, because for me, I've just become so kind of interested in it as a
Right.
as a form that, and just to think that we'd never really touched base with it before the pandemic,
Right.
and then suddenly our hand was forced, and then we just saw this burst of like incredible creativity,
Right.
and I just felt like in a way that was the gift that I got out of the pandemic, which was
Right.
like, okay, this is a real gift, because it meant that you were able to attend the show, and you're in New York, right? So
Exactly.
all these amazing like if when we're looking at a world of disconnection, how it enabled us to connect, I think was such a beautiful thing, and I don't want to lose that when we go back, if we go back.
Right. The whole thing about going back, and I'm glad to hear that theater has opened and that you're going to have a live audience and that you will continue to have an online production as well, the an online element of your
Yeah.
production. So it's like you said, it was an opportunity. I think people were so curious about what could we possibly do with the internet for live performances. And as you said, we were thrust into it, and creativity just completely blossomed out of
Yeah.
the big, great big question mark for it. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that way of saying it. Yeah.
yeah. So the next question was going to be, is there ever any going back? It's about this. You welcomed us back in May. I wasn't quite sure we were ready to be welcomed back. I
No, no.
thought it was a bit premature because, there's still so much uncertainty. And what the heck does that mean anyway, welcome back?
Yeah.
Is there ever any going back? That's
Hmm. Yeah. I,
question.
I I have this real obsession with optimism, and I just need it. And I just need it to be present in almost everything I do. And I think optimism won with the titling of that piece, and also the kind of, because it was called Welcome to Nowhere to begin with, because the pandemic felt like such a nebulous nothing sort of space. But as I was working on the project, things were happening in the world that felt good and felt positive. And then when I had my vaccine, that was kind of that became a really significant moment in the work that connected all of these. It was really weird, because it was just like I was having these like crazy memories and dreams, but then everything connected it. So I think that's why I went with, there was a bit of debate between me my partner and Jorge about that. But hey, it's look, from the basis of the opening of our conversation about New Zealand and Australia and what's going on in America and Britain right now, it probably was a bit preemptive, to be honest.
No, but I love the fact that it is about optimism because, even if it was just a creative metaphor, the moment you got your
Yeah,
vaccine, you were kind of, you felt that there was a
there
sense
was
of
hope.
there was
There
hope.
was there
Exactly.
was a pathway out for the first time in a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's super cool. Let's see. What have you been up to? You talked about you're going to go to the Riverfront in Newport to do TigerFace, which is something you've done before, right?
Yeah.
TigerFace is a piece of work of yours from some time ago, or tell us more about TigerFace and that.
It's been a long time coming. It's been a long process. It's had 2 R&Ds supported by Arts Council Wales. It's been
Mhm.
supported by Bristol Old Vic um, as one part of its ferment fortnight, which is where it kind of got its first real lease of life as a theatre performance. But it's been something that I've been doing in the back of bars for quite a while. Dressing up like a tiger and just kind of messing with people and trying to, the only aim I had was to reintroduce adults to childhood and childish, like kind of whimsical sorts of fleets of fancy, and to reconnect us with that question of like, what did we want to be when we grew up, and when did we start kind of closing the doors on our options and all those kinds of ideas, that the stuff that we don't consciously really question as children. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing as an adult, I don't know, but I'm not too concerned with it. So a couple of R&Ds. I did it at the Other Room as a fringe piece.
Other room is Cardiff, right?
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Other Room is connected to Porter's in Cardiff. Yeah. So they came to one of the R&Ds, they liked it, so they supported it, and then it got made for the Other Room. To be repurposed coming out the other side of the pandemic, we realized all these different things, so we're doing that. And then the work is being made as a fully realized theatre production, which it never has been before. So this is actually the first time it's getting made. I don't know if you can hear that,
Yeah,
but
it's okay.
it's very noisy birds.
Oh, those are birds. It
Yeah.
sounded like somebody walking through the door. So if you need a sound effect in future, just
Get the birds to do it. No,
right.
they're 2 birds that I adopted over lockdown,
Oh.
from people that didn't want them. So they are now wanted in some way, shape, or
Oh.
form. But they do get in the way of Zoom calls every now and again.
Oh, maybe we'll get to see them in a minute. That sounds super cool, Justin.
Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah. So when is that going to be?
That is going to be on the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd of October.
Oh, it's coming up. Okay, so it's
Yeah,
in October.
yeah,
Right. Okay, gotcha.
it's
All
pretty
right.
soon.
What?
It's pretty soon. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrifying. But yeah, I'm working with Tinshed on their project, the rocket launch Branhaven at the moment. So that's in September. So that's even earlier. So it's kind of,
Okay.
I'm just back to back with stuff really at the moment.
Okay, so you've been real busy then. So you got yeah, nice. Is
Yeah,
there anything else going on?
yeah, I'm doing residency with National Theatre Wales at the moment, which is the Walad Ein Plant, Children of the Future. I think that translates to out of Welsh, or maybe Land of Our Children is what it
Right.
translates to.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and that's a hyper local residency. So I'm doing it in my local park across the road, and that is to inform Welsh government's like green sort of initiative moving forward. So that's with Natural Resources Wales as well, and that's just commissioning a group of, I think, 8 artists to just investigate their local community and their local green spaces. And I'm also working with a photo gallery in Cardiff, as part of the Fusion Festival. So I think you know about the Tourist in Between project.
Okay.
Um,
There was a short film, is that right?
yeah,
That he
that's
did?
right.
Okay.
That was commissioned by Creative Cardiff.
Right.
And since then, I've had another commission from Photo Gallery to make another version of that, so the extension of that. So now me and my friend that I'm, well, my sort of, close working sort of partner on stuff, she and I were making a booth which will appear in Newport City, and it will appear outside famous landmarks and monuments, and people will have an opportunity to exchange knowledge for tourist trinkets, so key rings and fridge magnets and all those kinds of things.
So you're going to have passers-by come and tell you what they
Mhm.
know about tourist spots.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Tourist information in reverse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Right,
tourist information in reverse, but it's also not about them saying like, oh, historically this was built in 1965. It might be
right.
about them saying like, oh, one time I was here and someone was, hanging off this thing, and so it's about us picking up the real stories that surround these monuments and these icons and stuff. And so
Nice.
the reward that people get is a kind of classic tourist iconography, sort of thing. So it's either a
Yeah,
key ring,
trinket,
a
right, a
t-shirt.
trinket.
Yeah, a trinket is a great
Yeah.
word.
Oh, that's super. Good luck with that too. So you really do have a lot going on, and I'm happy to have some time with you to talk about your work and what's going on, and a little bit more about you. And I want to shift to your brand, okay?
Oh, okay.
To what you call yourself, a South Wales-based performer, theater maker, and nonsensical ideas man. So when did you decide that that was how you would identify and promote yourself?
um I think I think I I've worked for I've worked for 10 years for Tinshed Theatre Company, kind of founding that company from the ground up, and working with two really, really close friends of mine that, all the love in the world for. But you have to kind of realize at certain times when the systems that you've created maybe don't support you anymore, or when the ideas that you're investigating aren't necessarily really keeping you alive in a real creative way. And so when I was sort of thinking about, the things I want to do and pursuing those things and finding collaborations with people, um, I, I had to ask myself really like lots of questions, and there was also a huge amount of anxiety and a huge amount of kind of worry in terms of like, is this going to work? Am I going to be able to do this? Is this a stupid idea? I'm leaving the security of this kind of really known kind of job to do all these things. And I think that the thing that pushed me over the edge was me understanding that the way I want to function as a person and as an artist is that I want to invite reverence and a kind of a stupidity and an optimism and a joy into the world. And that's kind of what I want my primary function to be. And so if I kind of want that to be my primary function, then I kind of have to address it, from the start. But I also think that I wanted to kind of I kind of wanted to poke fun at the seriousness with which we usually approach these things, the way in which we usually regard ourselves as artists can be quite, we can take it quite seriously. And I think that it is serious, but I always say, that like with the TigerFace Show, I always say we're making a really stupid show about really serious things. So that's how I kind of like to communicate and talk, and that's how I think you can start to break down any barriers of access that people might have in terms of not understanding the intellectual properties behind an idea, or understanding where it comes from in terms of its context within art history, or its context within culture, societal kind of history. And I just want to kind of, I know that stuff and I get that stuff. And when I'm talking to people that need to get it, I'll say it. But until I need to, I won't. And I don't want to. So, so I kind of treat everything with this kind of, almost joyful disregard of the rules. So that's why I chose nonsensical ideas, man, which is just one of those things that you've asked me about.
Yeah, it's great to get inside your head a little bit, Justin, because we don't know each other very well, and you know, we see a certain person, we see the characters that you deliver, and it's fascinating to to get underneath that a little bit and to see that there's a lot of resources behind it, and you give it in a lot of thought too, and it's very much appreciated. And then some other people, like you said, don't necessarily want that, they don't need it, and you're not necessarily going to give it to them because
Yeah.
that's not what they want.
No. Or
Yeah, nice.
it's not how they're gonna engage with it. They're not going to engage if they feel like that's, something they have to
Exactly.
contain.
So,
I'm still here. I'm just
okay, yeah, so I'm just going to say that, I think that it's a very unique description. I think you're a very unique artist. But I get a sense that there are others around like you. Not to say you're not original, but I want to ask, is there a subculture of performers that inhabit a similar kind of space? And if so, can you tell us who they are and maybe even who you've been inspired by?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is. I think there is. I think there is a subculture of artists. I think one thing that I've seen kind of become more interesting to people, and it wasn't necessarily any part of my thought process, but I understand myself as someone within the system making choices, is that solo performers have become quite interesting to audiences and to venues recently, because I feel like there is a stripped kind of authenticity and autobiographical kind of nature to that stuff, which is reminiscent in kind of spoken word and stand-up comedy, where we see these kind of lone individuals who are kind of the authors of their own kind of stories, public stories, the stories that they're willing to share to the public and stuff. So I think that I've seen like that happening quite a lot recently, and that's become quite prevalent. So in order for us to understand the way things change, when in 10 years ago when I was leaving university, the thing I predominantly saw was young companies of 3 or 4 individuals that were going to make work together, and they're going to make a really specific brand of work. And now I'm really seeing a change in that sort of culture. And I, as well, I'm only able to kind of cite a really like hyper local culture, so like maybe a South Wales culture. And I think that my inspirations and the people that I kind of really I'm interested in are either similar to me and do the things that I do, or they either do specifically a version of what I do, or they do or they're also trying to kind of get into something and kind of subvert it. Terry Alderton is a really bizarre reference point for me, but he's a stand-up comedian, and he just does the most like incredible things with his time on stage that kind of just transcend any kind of stand-up rule system, and he just kind of is really, I think he's consciously aware that he's playing with just live performance and that kind of stuff. Holly McNish as a poet and a spoken word artist, I find like her work and the way that she wants to have that conversation with the public about things that are really personal to her really interesting, and the way that she chooses to write about it. I think that I'd be remiss, I think that's the right word, to not mention Bryony Kimmins, who is obviously the kind of champion of this sort of form. And actually, I did a couple of workshops with Bryony for Welcome Back, and Welcome Back as a product the process was really informed by sort of Bryony Kimmins' philosophy of kind of approach and work and stuff. So I'd cite those as some really clear examples of people that
That's,
inspire me.
thank you. That's really interesting, and I'm certainly looking forward to looking into some of their work. So it's great to have some points of reference there. It's interesting to hear you talk about the collective, and that there's from your own experience, of course, that there was a shift from the working in groups in companies to a more solo performances. And it sounds to me from what you talked about your departure from Tin Shed that you also made that shift. So you're on that kind of wave, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about your solo performances in terms of you told us quite a lot already, but just want to get an idea. So you self-create, you
Hmm.
self-direct, and you
Yeah.
perform solo, and you've made that decision to do that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you want to say something about that?
I don't always perform solo, and in the kind of in these on the work I'm creating at the moment, I'm looking at ways to bring people in that are intuitive to autobiographical. I always say my work is semi-autobiographical. So what I'm always trying to do is create a distance between me and the subject matter, so I'm able to perform it with confidence and allow the audience to have safety. But also, what I'm wanting to do by doing that is create a universal kind of mode or lens for people to view it through. So it is my story, it is how I feel. That's why I'm making the work. That's very important to me. But the work itself, when it's in front of people, has to be able to be accessed by them without the interference of specific details from my life. What I'm interested in is being the person that puts that on stage and has and molds it and performs it and gives it to people. Absolutely. But I wouldn't exclusively say a rule is that I won't have anyone else on stage. Like there has been instances where I've worked with performers who will join me for something, but yeah, I think that the rest of it is pretty bang on. Yeah.
Okay, okay, no, that's fair enough. And I'm certainly not trying to pigeonhole you.
Oh no, for sure. I think the pandemic has kind of changed my sphere of thought a little bit, where I'm really thinking about collaboration as well. I'm really thinking about like how that exists and where that exists. And on Tuesday, I had my first day on the TigerFace Show, where I have a dramaturg in the room now, and I have a producer in the room now, and I have an access consultant and a designer. And so it's kind of really, really strange because it's in this expansion of solo performance, but it's I have to understand that this work is they have to this work is about them as well.
Well, sure. And that's exactly, I want to say that I would still consider what you're doing solo performance, but I absolutely love and appreciate how you're talking about, the technicians and the other creative heads that you're collaborating with as a collaboration, as, you know, when I'm referring to a solo performance, I mean the person on stage. So are you still going to be the person, the one person on stage with a collaborative effort of other people, as you've mentioned,
Yeah.
dramaturg, designer,
Yeah.
crew?
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. I think I'll always stay on stage, because that's the only part of it that I really feel like is the part that I'm invested in. It's the goal, and the aim is to like have those moments where I'm going to be stood in front of people and I'm going to be able to connect with them in that way. I mean, that is the drive. That is the absolute driving force. So I think that, yeah, I understand what you mean. I think these I think that having spoken to a lot of other solo performers who are making stuff, we're getting into a sticky place with terminology. And I think we had this brief conversation about dramaturgy and like really what that means, and how we understand it, and how, you know, how it's historically understood, and also how it's understood within different systems of production. And I think for solo performers, we're kind of struggling to find those people who are going to maybe direct or drama or be dramaturgs, or, you know, whatever that means. You know, I've heard all kinds of stuff like devising partner, collaborative friend, creative individual, you know, all these different roles that are now coming into the room with us to help us like create our work. It's a really interesting like cooking pot of terminology, and I'm sure that out of it will come in new forms of terminology that will help us explain what we do and why we're doing it.
Yeah, because the dramaturg is an old term that has in effect come back, and
Yeah,
so the
right.
idea that you have to define it or redefine it or expand it to for it to work for you or call it
Yeah,
something else, it just makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
I
Yeah,
think so.
and
I think when I first heard it like years ago, I was like, what the hell is that? You
yeah,
know, who does that? What is that for? Like, what is that? Just get a director, whatever. You know, I was a bit like that about it, but now I'm like, oh, now I see what that can be. But then, you know,
well,
maybe I
tell
don't.
us then. So what is the difference between a dramaturg and a director then? Tell us, in your
Um,
opinion, in your perspective, from your perspective.
yeah, it's interesting because Charlotte, who is the dramaturg on the project at the moment, we were having this conversation about the difference between directing and dramaturgy, and really it's maybe something that is very subtle, but it's something that happens in the room, and it's something that happens before you get into the room, because Charlotte really wanted to be clear about the terminology, and she was kind of saying things like, well, you know, because either you want me to lead or you want me to listen and respond. And so the difference between those two things is really clear. And as long as you can assign, you know, different roles to them and different meanings to them. So to listen and observe and feed back in is the role of the dramaturg. To lead and direct and run the room is the role of the director. So they are very different roles. As soon as you just start using a different phrasing and terminology outside of, you know, what we kind of know and understand in the outside of the room, inside, you know. So yeah, so it became really clear to me what the difference is. And I
Thank
still
you
don't
for
know
that.
what I need.
Oh, you don't know what you need?
No, I still don't know what I need.
You still haven't found what you're looking for?
I'm gonna listen to that now. That's an obsessive trait I have, where I have to listen to that song now
Right,
after
you're
we
going to get an
finish this
earworm
interview.
after
Yeah, yeah,
this.
absolutely.
But that's a great description, and I suppose it really is about the relationship with the person and the communication with the person that you're working with, and the clarity between the collective or the two, or if you're
Yeah,
working with
sure,
people, you have to be clear with who's doing what, when, and why.
totally. But
Right.
the important thing was that I needed people to apply for that role. So when you were kind of like, you know, that raising that question about it, which was a really like fair and decent thing to do, because it made me go like, right, I need to figure out how I communicate what I need, you know, otherwise I'm not going to get it, you know. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was really clear to me. Yeah, so it was really helpful.
Yeah, it's all fascinating. It's great. And look, the clock is being kind to us. Again, like I want to talk more about you because I am fascinated about the creative process, and I wanted to ask you about, because we've talked about it, your work, when it's arrived on stage, but a little bit about the incubation process, and maybe is there something incubating right now that you could just share with us that's just might be a little tiny little embryo of something, just to give us an idea of what it might look like and sound like at this stage?
Yeah, I think like the incubation process is that there is lots of there is lots of incubations all side by side, and they're all different ideas and they're all different projects, and occasionally they will sort of leak into one another and inform one another in different ways, but they all have their time. You know, I've had stuff in the back of my brain for years and years and years, and then suddenly it makes sense for it to happen. I mean, Welcome Back was a little bit like that. Life Coach, the show I did with National Theatre Wales, was very much like that, where I'd had this idea of a life coach for so long, and then all of a sudden, you know, I had notes on it. I had like I keep these note cards, which kind of, so this is a show for me. So
Nice.
this is actually Welcome Back. So yeah, so everything, it happens on individual cue cards. So there'll just be like an idea, which is, so there's Blackpool 1998, the big one, right? So they'll just collect like that, and then suddenly something will come along that will just like enable them to be realized. And that's what happened with life coach. I'd had this idea of being this life coach for so long, and then National Theatre Wales put this commission out, and I was like, oh, this is go time. This is when this idea comes out of storage. So, you know, the incubation period is lots of tanks alongside one another with lots of ideas. But the thing I'm really interested in at the moment, I think I mentioned it briefly, is working with my friend Pete. Brilliant. And he kind of looks like a Viking. And I had this idea of doing a piece of work about masculinity and about kind of communication, and about men, and about our bodies and the way that we communicate, and the way, and our inability to communicate, really, and how it's damaging, how destructive it is to us, you know. And a lot of the pain around the absolute tragedy of Sarah Everard in this country, you know, the woman that was walking home and was picked up by a minicab driver, and by a policeman, as it turned out. You know, the mistrust that caused, and the chaos that caused, and the division that caused between genders was absolutely like correct. And there's so many systematic sort of social political problems which underline all of that have not been dealt with for years and years and years and years, you know. And I just felt so much of the responsibility for that. I just felt so much confusion and pain from it. And I started to go online and read a lot of stuff about that men were saying in return, or as a retaliation. And it just became really apparent to me that we don't know how to communicate, that masculinity is broken and it doesn't serve anyone, and it has no place in a modern world. Our sort of antiquated versions of masculinity are actually really damaging us, because we're still upholding these rules which don't enable us to interrelate or connect with people properly. You know, I'm talking like as men. So this that thing happening in the world, sort of, you know, globally or geopolitically or UK, you know, happening, connected with a weird idea I'd had for ages, which was to have a Viking on stage with me in the background, just holding a sword and holding the space and being hugely masculine and muscly and aggressive, and just haunting me the whole time I was on stage. and then me trying to hold it together whilst knowing that there was this kind of super intimidating version of masculinity behind me. So I'd had that idea for a long time.
Right.
And so when that happened, and when all of these things were happening online, and I could see the kind of conversations that were being had, I suddenly was reminded of that idea of the Vikings stood behind us, kind of making us act in these terrible ways as men, you know, these aggressive, reductive ways as men. And so I was kind of like, right, that's the show I need to make next, you know. So that's a version
a great example
of the incubation process. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. That's beautiful. I'm going to wind up a little bit and just talk about generically and broadly life of an artist in the 21st century in the UK. It
Okay.
sounds to me like things are going well for you. It sounds to me like you've got a handle on stuff, even though your characters, expose the really raw underbelly. So, again, thank you for your work. I really do appreciate it. And this has been a great interview. But I'd like to ask now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being impossible and the worst, and
Okay.
10 being a dream come true and the best, what quality of life would you say as an artist in the 21st century in the UK? What quality of life are you having? And while you're thinking about it, what are the factors that make it so?
Um, I would say like a 7, maybe like a 6 or a 7. And I think it's because you've caught me on a good day when optimism is prevailing. Because this might change, as fast as anything else. But I think like one thing I'm really aware of is the sort of freedom I've created for myself. And it's something that I've been unconsciously doing my whole life by rejecting systems that would prevent me from having it. So, when I left university, I got offered a really good job, like 9 to 5, and it would have been, great money, but like not what I wanted to do. So I didn't take it. And my parents were furious at me. And I told them I was going to start a theatre company. And, so I think I've rejected these systems, like I said, like almost subconsciously for so long. So I feel like I found myself with, I've worked to the point where I'm comfortable with maybe a decent amount of freedom, as long as I can sort of self-manage and survive on what I'm sort of able to get and what I'm offered. But I do feel like for me that is enough, and that is quite a lot. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna have to just move to my charger. Yeah, I don't know. I've veered off a little bit there. I'll let you get back on with the
No,
question.
that's fine. It's just they're just kind of winding up questions, really. But 6 to 7, as I said, and as you've answered, you've given us 6 to 7. It's a really nice level. But what would make it better?
Yeah, I think living in a system that I feel is fairer and enables people to get more out of their life, that would definitely make things a lot better. Not having the government that we've got would make things a lot better, but I think there are small scale things and large scale things, and I actually don't want to say that like changing the government is a large scale thing. I think that's a really manageable task as long as we can figure out how to communicate better without them interfering. So yeah, but also I think if we're talking about the life of an artist and what that is like, then I feel like we need access to more opportunities. I feel like we need access to more resources. I feel like we need access to more funding. I think we need to try to communicate with we need to be steered in the right direction sooner, because I spent so long thinking that, I need to speak to all the right people before I can do anything, and then actually learning that I'm just going to do stuff for people, for myself, for as output, and I'm just going to see where that gets me, and eventually it gets you somewhere where you're able to kind of know who it is you are and what it is you want. And I think when I left university, that wasn't a major concern of mine. The major concern of mine was being whatever anyone else wanted me to be so that I could succeed. So I feel like something that could point us in the right direction sooner would be much better, and that is systematic. That's the way we're educated, and that's the way we exist within this system of kind of having to tell everyone what we want to do so they'll give us money and justify it.
Yeah, so perhaps a lot more in what's the word when you look within? I've just forgotten what it is, but the thing where while you're in the system, if you want to be an artist, a lot more introspection rather than
Introspection, yeah.
right, you know, the introspection so that you actually know who you are. And that's a it's a great answer, and I think it's a great place to end.
Wicked.